What's up, guys? So we have a good question from Colin, who had a situation where this new guy comes into the gym and shakes things up a little bit for him. So the situation is that Colin's been training for about 7 years, off and on a little bit, but for the most part 7 years. This new guy comes in, he's a D3 wrestler, he has a couple days of jiu-jitsu, and then him and Colin roll. During their roll, they did 2 rounds, 6 minutes each. During the roll, Colin got submitted twice by this guy from the front headlock position, right, with variations of it. And he says that size wasn't a factor, they're both big guys, but the situation is making him reevaluate his skills and ability, because he's like, man, he goes, I never thought that you would have some beginner come in with no experience and be able to beat me on the mat. He's like, I thought I was better than that. And, you know, unless they were some sort of athletic freak, I thought I would be able to beat them. And he says that he's wondering if I have any perspectives or any advice on the situation that he's experiencing. So, Colin, thanks for the question. And the reason I say this is a really good question is because if you guys haven't had this happen before, you will, I promise you. You're going to have someone come into your gym who's going to rattle you up a little bit, because it's going to be someone where once you're kind of doing pretty good for yourself and you're like, yeah, man, I think I've got this stuff down. And this may happen, as I'll share later on, you might be a brown belt or a purple belt and this happens, where all of a sudden some guy comes into your gym and all of a sudden you thought you'd be able to take care of them, and they whoop you up a bit. So I'm going to give you two examples, Colin. One is going to be a wrestler that came into our gym, shook things up for everyone. And I'm also going to give you a situation where I rolled with someone that didn't even have a formal grappling background, and they still caught me in a submission. So the wrestler came into this gym back in 2011, and I talked to him on a Friday, right? He was doing a workout with me, and I talked to him. I was like, hey, man, you ever want to do some jiu-jitsu? And he said, well, I wrestled a little bit, so sure, I'll do some. And so, you know, Monday rolls around, we're doing takedowns. I'm like, that'd be the best day. So he comes in on this Monday takedown day. During the takedown class, I'm watching him drill this double leg, and he's drilling it smooth, like legs are picking up. He's doing it better than I can do it. And I look at him and I'm like, come on, man, like, you know, you've done something more than a little bit. He like a little bit of wrestling. So I come up to him, I said, hey, man, like, what have you done? I was like, you've done more than a little bit of wrestling. And he says, well, you know, I wrestled in college. He tells me the college he wrestled, and he wrestled in high school. He was a really good wrestler. I was like, why didn't you say something? And he said, well, I didn't want to make a big deal about it. So I was like, whatever. So we start rolling. And he's launching, dude, just throwing him through the friggin' walls over here, right? And you know, that was cool. I mean, but it was cool to have a good wrestler. But you know, you thought maybe you'd get on the ground, maybe you'd be able to deal with him. Not many people could deal with him in the beginning, because it was just different. It was unorthodox to a jiu-jitsu gym, right? And that's the thing you guys got to remember, you know, sort of on a side tangent. When someone comes in from a different grappling background, whether it's sambo, judo, wrestling, whatever it is, that's grappling skill. It might not be jiu-jitsu based sort of style, it's still grappling skill, and don't discount that. So when you roll with someone that's got a strong grappling background, just because they haven't done jiu-jitsu doesn't mean that they can't, like, you know, do some good grappling. So when we get them on the ground, he's putting in people in front headlocks, he's putting them in headlocks, he's just pinning them, smashing them. People can't sweep them, they don't know what to do with them. When I'm rolling with him the first time, I couldn't take him down at the beginning, and when I would sweep him, every time I would come up with a sweep, he would boom, bolt away, because I'm getting ready to put him on his back, and he would bounce. It's like you put a spring in his back, and he would just pop back up and get away from me. So damn frustrating. Now, for me, I'm speaking from my experience. In the beginning, I was frustrated just like you, because again, I'm out there in front of people, like looking in front of my students, and like, I can't do anything with this guy. But I was excited because I've been through this before. I knew how this happened. I would roll with him again and again and again. And what ended up happening was, the more that we rolled, the more I started to figure him out. And when I would come up with my sweeps, I realized that I had to come up with power, right? I couldn't just come up, because a lot of times jiu-jitsu guys, they kind of get into a sort of a cadence with each other. As the sweep comes, they'll just kind of sit back to their back, right? Well, I sort of with him, I had to come up to, like, when I'm coming up with like a half guard sweep or something like that, I had to come up and I had to like just rush him down, right? Because I had to get on top of him. So I would come up with a lot of power. When we were doing takedowns, initially I really couldn't do takedowns on him because he would just smash me. But over time, I got used to shooting in and, again, coming up with a ton of power to finish up the takedown. Now, where this was a beneficial thing was that I remember being in several situations, tournament-wise, right, competitions where, and MMA fights, where as I'm lifting the guy up off his feet with a double leg, or as I'm chasing a guy down after a half guard sweep, I'm on top of the guy, and literally there's just a flash. It's like literally just a second as I'm running into this guy where I'm thinking, man, I'm really glad I had Tim in the gym, because you realize that that power that I'm coming up with these sweeps and I'm finishing these takedowns with, these only came as a byproduct of me rolling with this monster over and over and over again. So it's a good thing. Another situation that happened, you know, this was when I was a purple belt, was when I was rolling with these mixed martial arts guys, right? And these guys had no formal background. They were just guys who'd done a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But I was rolling with them to help some of them get ready for fights, and I remember that a lot of times, like my arms, I would leave my arms out and I would get caught in kimuras, which is my favorite move, but I was getting frustrated because I would be going for a pass, right? And in most cases when I was used to rolling with jiu-jitsu guys, they would like defend the position. These guys, they don't care about position, at least, you know, I'm not saying this is all mixed martial artists, this was just these guys who didn't have the formal background. They were just like looking around for something to grab and they would just boom, rip it. And again, it was frustrating because I'm thinking to myself, I'm a purple belt, right? Purple belts are pretty damn good at jiu-jitsu, and I'm getting submitted by these guys who haven't really done much of anything. And again, bit of a blow to the ego, but I knew what to do. I kept rolling with them, kept rolling with them, kept rolling with them, and eventually I understood what was going on, and I was a lot tighter with my position, and I became aware that just because I was in the positional dominant position, right, doesn't mean anything, right? I have to be mindful and always on my guard. And so where I'm going with this is that it's a good thing you're rolling with these people, right? It's not fun necessarily in the beginning, but it's a good thing because what's going to happen is the more and more you roll with this guy, the better and better you're going to become because they're pushing you in a different direction that you weren't ready for, right? And I think of it almost like a big stew, right? Every one of the guys in the gym, every one of the men and women in the gym, they add a little bit of something to that big pot, right? Well, now you got a new flavor that you weren't ready for, and boom, we're gonna throw that in there, okay? And so now you have this new guy in there. He's gonna shake things up a little bit for the guys in the gym because they're going to have to learn how to deal with them. But in the long run, it's going to be really good because you might find yourself with another wrestler down the road and you're going to be glad that you rolled with that guy because you're like, I can deal with these front headlocks. I can deal with these takedowns or whatever he's doing. Now, the thing about it is, and this is for you, Colin, and anybody watching this video, is when you start to roll with these people, you may not have the exact technique that like a lot of times people are always looking for the technique to fix it. It's probably not going to happen that way. Probably what's going to happen is that you're going to start rolling with this person more and more and more, and your body just figures it out, right? Your subconscious figures it out before the head can articulate it. That's the way it always kind of happened with me when I would start rolling with these guys that were difficult for me to roll with. It wasn't like I one day woke up and said, I'm going to tweak this one position and this is going to fix everything. Instead, what happened was I rolled with these guys more and more and more. And as I did that, it kind of just rubbed off on me a little bit where I got used to the way they rolled. I got sort of understanding of how things were happening and I was able to defend myself and get the better of them or at least make things a little bit better off for me. So my advice to you, Colin, would be to go to your gym and roll with that guy as many times as you can and just soak it up. And again, it might be frustrating in the beginning, but in the long term, it's going to be a good thing. I can tell you, just like the Tim situation. For a lot of the guys in the gym, it was very frustrating, but guys like me, even Chad used to get so pissed off at Tim because he would just smash him and hang on to him, but Chad also learned how to deal with wrestlers and learned how to cope with that kind of pressure too. So it was a beneficial thing. It's tough, but again, long term, very good. So Colin, hope that video is helpful to you, brother, and thank you so much for the question. And guys, I'll talk to you next time.